welcome to the long-awaited part 3 of my occult origin story. I've been meaning to film this for a little while. I think there's another part or two after this. I try to break it up because I am 45, so it is a long story to tell for one video, and I'm trying to make it go in different chunks of my life. So the last video I was focusing on, like, kind of up to my, high school years. So this is about 1993. I was towards the end of high school. Well, actually, all throughout most of high school, I did a lot of art and poetry. I know, shocking. I need to dig some of that up because I'm really curious now to see what I wrote after all these years, because it's been a long time since I've looked at any of that stuff. So, I grew up in a small town, as I mentioned in the previous installments of my occult origin story, and I often joke I'm from Hell or Town. I used to always spell it with the capital HELLERTOWN. It's in Pennsylvania. Anyways, so in August of 1993, I left Hellertown for the big city of Philadelphia. And I went to school, art school, shocking, I know. I went to Moore College of Art and Design and lived in the dorms. Moore College of Art and Design, since most people probably have never heard of it, it's a small private arts college that is, it's a women's only college, or at least was at the time. I think they've updated their policy on gender stuff, and I know that since they have graduate programs now, those are co-ed. Anyways, so I became a goth. Again, I know you're shocked. And I started getting, I was more drawn to witchcraft. I was in the big city. We had all these, occult shops and cool things and stuff going on. So I was getting more into that. And I knew people, I went to art school. I was a goth, do the math. So I started learning more, I found that, when I was doing papers for different classes, I was focusing on, I remember doing a paper on the history of witchcraft and things of that nature. So, the things that I became most interested in, and I know this has kind of been a theme throughout a lot of my videos, was past life regression. I started getting more into astrology and tarot cards, and that was, just sort of the gateway into things, because I had already been dabbling and doing stuff. So it wasn't a huge stretch of the imagination. But, at this time, and we're still kind of pre-internet, so you kind of had to, your knowledge base was what you had access to. So most of the occult stores, with the exception of one, I think was it Harry's Occult Emporium, which was more Santeria based. The rest were mostly Wiccan. So my early foray into witchcraft was through Wicca and learning, about all that stuff. And, I took a class through one of the local witch shops in Philadelphia. And, it was something... I think it kind of provided a lot of the foundation for what I'm doing now today. Because there's a lot of things that I'm realizing as I'm going through my path working that's bouncing back to stuff that happened back then. Whether it was, trance state visions or dreams or stuff that I experienced, that some of that is all kind of coming back now, which I find to be really fascinating. So as I said, with all the Wicca thing and the whole thing that even to this day still annoys me is the whole threefold law, whatever you do will come back to you threefold kind of thing. So what we find, or at least I did, I'm a creative pissant. I did my first curse back then, and it was sort of it was more of a reflection thing, let all you do come back to you sort of thing. And I remember doing it in the apartment of where I lived in 94, 95. And it was interesting. I would say I'm not going to go into details, but it worked, and you know, it is what it is. But I don't really I don't ascribe to the threefold law. I think that's just kind of silliness. But um, there's consequences for things. It's I just don't believe in that type of consequences for things. At this point in time in my life, I was starting to struggle with major depression. To the point where I couldn't get out of bed. I was having trouble going to class, and just having a whole host of personal issues and things like that. So I ended up moving back home in 1995. So I was back to hell, town, and it was a lonely point in time in my life. So I mean, I kept writing. I was still doing my art and taking some classes here and there. And I met some friends later in the 90s. There was a little bit of a blur due to psychotropic medication, so I don't really remember much of like 96 and 97 for that reason. Apparently I missed the fact that David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails toured, so because I would have been all up in that shit. But I digress. But yeah, there's again, there was sort of a resurgence in a lot of metaphysical shops and occult shops and things like that. I'd go for tarot readings and Reiki and stuff like that. And it's funny, like I still remember I got my first like magical oils, which is funny now since I make my own magical oils, but like I still like have the muscle memory of exactly what those oils smelled like. And I have like a patchouli one, and it was just the most perfect patchouli. And I've been chasing that patchouli smell ever since, because whenever I smell like patchouli essential oil now, I'm like, no, that's not quite right. It must have been blended with something else, but it was like the perfect patchouli smell. I know that's also kind of goth some patchouli. I also smoked clove cigarettes, so I've got the whole package, goth deal here. But I also had like an attraction oil and stuff like that. And I remember these smells so perfectly. Like it's just ingrained in my muscle memory, even though it's like over 20 years ago. But, I started getting more. I never really practiced Reiki, but I've had it done on me, but it was something I was interested in. I started working a little bit with channeling the dead and, working with spirits in that sense. And a lot of dream work, even through, I've always been a vivid dreamer, and that's something that's probably carried out through my entire life. And sometimes there were, prophetic dreams and things of that nature. I think I mentioned in one of the other videos where I was talking about, I used to have recurrent plane crash dreams, and this happened throughout the 90s as well. And the one that really kind of was, I guess, shocking in a way, because I remember it so clearly, because I was going to Italy in August of 96, and I figured, just because I had plane crash dreams, and this is the first time I was flying overseas, blah, blah, blah. I was just having all these dreams about, and we were flying out of JFK Airport in New York City, and I just kept having all these dreams about, planes crashing while taking off into the water and the wreckage, and it was just like almost every night. And yeah, I told my mom about this because I was still living at home at the time, and one day I woke up, or afternoon probably, I woke up with my mom sitting on the bed, white as a ghost, with the newspaper, and she's just like, because the TWA Flight 800 had crashed taking off from JFK Airport, and all the wreckage was in the water, as we know from history and stuff like that. And she was just like, how did you know? I'm like, because it would always be the weird thing with the plane crash dreams I had. I was always witnessing them, but I was never in them. And like I would get all the details of it, but it's like I couldn't tell you what day or time or airline or any of that stuff that was going to be involved with it. But the weird thing always was, but the ones that I had the most prominent dreams about was that someone from the local sort of generalized, area was killed in the plane crash. I didn't even know them, but somehow there was some kind of link there. I don't have them as much now. That I'm older. The last time I had one last major one I had was 9/11, but we'll get into that when we get to that part of the occult journeys. I started getting a lot more interested in metaphysical studies. I was looking at, now we have the internet towards the late, although it was not all that great, but, we're able to look up things online and had resources and things. But I started getting more interested in the Rosicrucian order. And, a lot of the things that were taught within that, I never joined or whatnot, but it was something that I found myself drawn to, is learning these, sort of occult mystery traditions and things of that nature. So, it is interesting. And I have to dig up some of my old journals from back during this time. From what stuff I wrote down, because I've always had this weird, I go into a trance state and there's this weird, symbolic language I write in. I don't know what language it is. It kind of looks like a cross between maybe Japanese and Arabic, kind of. So I don't know. I don't really know what it is. I'll have to do a video specifically on that, or research or something, but I'm kind of curious to kind of go back and look at some of the things I wrote from when I was taking the classes and the experiences I had with doing, some of the trance meditation kind of things, because a lot of the work I'm doing now is kind of harkening back to that. Hey, you remember that thing you did in 1995? This is what that was all about. So it's interesting how sometimes these things you don't really think about for 20 some years come back, and, it's oh, okay, I get it now. That makes perfect sense. So, this is just part 3 of my little occult journey thing. I'm probably going to do 2 more segments, on the subject matter, just so I can keep the video short, because otherwise they would be very long, and I don't think people always want to watch, hour-long videos and stuff like that. So, that takes us up to about the year 2000, and this is the point at which I decided to move back to Philadelphia. And, Philadelphia has always kind of been my home in its weird little way. But things changed. I was starting to get older. I was 24 when I moved back, so I wasn't that old. But, anyways, life happened, and here I am. So stay tuned for the next episode, and thank you once again to my Patreon supporters, and don't forget to click like and subscribe. Love you all.